And we are live. Uh, this has been an action-packed day for me. But welcome to JWC live stream. This is JWC Story Autopsy with Ricky and Tom, and special guest Amber Danson. We are all creatives doing creative writing, enjoying JWC's writing community. We had a great meeting last Tuesday where we were doing some reads. Uh, new people showed up. It was very exciting, and I was like thrilled with how it turned out. And we got a new assignment for like 500 to 1,000 word flash fiction, and I wrote a little sci-fi number. How are you guys? Tom, Amber, how are you? How's your week been?
Oh, I've been doing pretty decent. It's just been kind of hot here.
Yeah, you
And being
said it.
hot, yeah, being hot stifles me. I sleep.
Mm, Another feeling.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I am not built for such things. I fare much better in the cold. Um, yeah, I feel that. So whenever that's the case, you're uncomfortable or it's too hot, especially if you need to catch up on sleep. I mean, creativity gets at least partially shelved. Definitely something to battle against. Tom, how about you? How are you faring?
Oh, really good. Today I worked on Emily Breck's diaries. Um,
Mm,
yeah, I decided I would stick little tiny snippets in as she goes to bed every night. You know,
yeah.
and as she encounters a ghost or she sees a UFO or whatever
Yep.
craziness she encounters, try to basically just get into her head a little bit about open up her character a little more about what is she thinking and what is she up to, and I'm also working on the bride.
Oh,
So
that's wonderful.
I have the
Wonderful to
bride
hear.
in the year 1800. She's working in a hospital in Berlin. She's working in the with the midwives because that's what she was, and trying to be inconspicuous for her massiveness and her gigantic strength, and and it's
It's I'm sure whatever it is, it's nice and moody. You do that period stuff really well, and I'm nothing but curious about the bride and where that's going. That's been really great. I wrote that flash fiction, but I'm working on this book I'm writing with my nephew called Chiron 6. It's a sci-fi thing. Going to be like, I think 50, 60,000 words. I already have like maybe 8K. That's like pretty much keeper material, but I had a significant news flash about the like who exactly is the main character of this book. It's you ever have that confusion where the concept comes first and then the main character later, and then you start coming up with more stuff and you're wondering which one should lead.
mm,
You guys ever experienced that?
I'm more character driven. I
Yeah,
usually my plots usually form around the characters.
that's the thing.
that works.
I'm not necessarily that way. I mean, to each their own, certainly, and I think it's probably more common that the MC shows up first, but sometimes it's an event or a thought experiment or some kind of
Sure.
phenomenon that drives the story, and then you decide who you're going to put in that situation.
Right.
How
Yeah,
about you, Tom?
I'm character driven myself, although on occasion a set of circumstances come up that fit into a just shout out a character. Recently, I came up with an idea about a policeman who travels to this mansion to with a warrant to search this guy's house,
Mm.
and he's a nice guy, but there's something suspicious about him, and he shows him the entire house except the drawing room, And he says, "No, I'm afraid you can't go in there." He goes, "Yeah, but this warrant says I can." And they go back and forth. When they go into the drawing room, it's covered with maps of various cities in across the United States with pins and newspaper articles. And basically, this guy has been going around the country destroying vampires and trying to keep on the low key because he doesn't want anybody to know it's if they found out it was him, he would be dead. And so the cop is from Hawaii, and his parents were killed by
Whoa.
vampires. So he decides, instead of turning the guy in, he goes in with him and says, "I'm going to help you track down." There's a coven of vampires roaming the country, and the guy's been finding them and killing them and keeping track of them in his drawing room in his mansion. So that the mansion and the room and all the newspaper articles that came first, and the character popped into my head right away. Yeah, as that. So
Yeah, no, I'm hip. I have that situation going on. It's a cosmic sci-fi thing, like living organic planets, giant superstructures, commanding wormhole technology, and like whatever arises from a million years of supreme artificial intelligence. Like what would it make in all that time? Um, so it decided to bend itself into the evolution of plants, and really it's like a botanical super intelligence. It calls itself the gardener, and it just goes making super blooms on whatever planet is hospitable to that end. So what would the gardener's procreative cycle, like what would the gardener's child be if it could grow a sentient plant with all of that intellect? And it occurred to me the other day on my front porch is fantastic. This weekend I'm hoping to sink my claws into that and really flesh that out and get it to the point of writing. I
sort
think
of
my
like
nephews.
a panspermia planet, and for one of a way,
Yeah,
it seeds the universe. But
yeah, absolutely. And it has a reason. I mean, I'm not going to unpack all of it because I'm still fleshing it out. But this character, the gardener and his son, I'm really getting that. The gardener has two kids, a son and a daughter, and it's like one of them is going to be a major focus in the main narrative. Anyway, I'm having a blast with that. That's all I can say. It's fantastic. Just finished Nidhogg, and I was like, I took a little break, like I took a couple weeks just to chill and outline and do stuff. But I want to write now. I want to write again. I got to get back to that. And you guys, I know you got a creative obsession going, even if you don't identify that way, as a creative obsessor the way I do. You guys are constantly at it, hammer and tongs, throwing down words. I know. And I was going to say, I want to do a read this episode so that we can maybe not be as serious like we were the last couple weeks. I think we had, agenda pieces. This is much better to have a read. So, Amber, do you have anything to read for us today?
Yes, I have a story from my collection of mythological creatures. And this one, well, I don't reveal what it is right away, so I'll just read.
cool.
Yeah, let's get going with that. That's fantastic. I'm psyched. All right, thank you for sharing your screen, and by all means, let's hear it.
The baby was crying. I couldn't blame her. She was cold and wet. There was nothing I could do for her except hold her. I kept my body bent to shelter her from the rain while I walked, but I dared not look directly at her. I so desperately wanted her to live. I lived far from the human lands, far from those who would do me harm. Hours passed before I reached human-tamed lands, the mountains giving way to hilly terrain. I continued to head downward. I could see what looked like a human structure in the distance. It made as good a destination as any. If I couldn't find what I needed there, I would move on. I lost sight of it when I entered a dip in the land, then I crested a hill and there it was. I paused and gave the place a long once-over. It was made of rough-hewn stone, with half timber making up the second story. There were lights in a few windows, and a sign hung out front. A road bisected my path. With great trepidation, I walked to the door and pounded on it. Then I stood with my head down, wishing I knew more about human etiquette. A woman of middle years opened the door. She looked careworn and wary. "How can I help you?" she said, in a voice that was friendlier than I expected. "I need shelter." I kept my head down. Rain dripped from the hood of my cloak. "Come in, then, and sit by the fire." I entered the tavern. The hood hid my face, darkened spectacles veiled my eyes. Still, I did not think it wise to look at anyone too closely, so I took in the interior with quick glances. Long tables and benches filled the space, and barrels stood behind a counter. Opposite the counter, an enormous fireplace with a roaring fire invited me to warm myself. With Larica fussing in my arms, I shivered in relief as the heat seeped into my chilled body. "Is that a baby? You're mad to take an infant out in weather like this." The woman followed me to the fireplace. It wasn't raining when I left. I felt my deadly hair stir under my hood and held my breath until it subsided. The woman studied me for a moment, then walked away, only to return in a moment with a knitted woolen blanket. "Here, let me take him. You can take your cloak off and hang it to dry." "Her name is Larica," I said, transferring my baby to the stranger's arms. It wasn't safe to take off my cloak. I stayed hooded, watching as she unwrapped the sodden blanket from around the squirming newborn. Then she wrapped Larica in the dry blanket. "There now," she cooed, holding Larica against her shoulder. "Why, she's a sweet little thing, isn't she?" My throat grew tight and I said nothing. "Have you traveled far?" I hesitated. "My home is in the hills. I've been walking since sunup." She let out a low whistle, then laughed softly when my stomach growled. "You must be famished, walking all day with a baby." No point in telling her I hadn't stopped to eat. I ran my tongue over my fangs and said, "A little meat would be welcome." "Are you hiding from someone?" Her voice was hesitant. "Forgive me, but most people around here don't hide their faces." "I'm running away," I said, though it wasn't quite true. I held out my arms. She settled Larica in my arms and said, "From your man?" Rye's words filled me until I couldn't breathe, so I nodded. "Well, you're safe here. Sit you down and I'll bring you some food." She hurried away before I could answer. I took in the rest of the tavern in a few quick glances. In one corner, a man and a woman talked in low voices. At the bar, a man took a hearty swallow from his tankard. The man at the bar bothered me. He kept looking in my direction, though he seemed perplexed rather than hostile. I sat by the fire. Larica was making unhappy sounds, so I opened my vest and began to nurse her in the shelter of my cloak. The woman came back with a loaded plate. She set it before me and said, "Will you be needing a room?" "No, I thank you. I'll be moving on again as soon as I can." "You're in danger." She looked toward the door as if expecting someone to break it down. "It's Larica who's in danger." I could hear Rye's words as if he were standing before me again. "She's a waste of our time. Let her die." She sat down across from me. "Let me guess. He wanted a son." "More like a different daughter." "Why? What's wrong with her?" "Nothing. She's perfect." I began to cry. I couldn't help it. She made as if to pat my shoulder, but I jerked away and hunched in on myself. "Well, eat up while it's hot," she said, and went back to tending the bar. I looked at the plate. Beef roast with something fluffy and white, chunks of something orange, sausage links and slices of juicy-looking green. I felt a twinge of guilt for the food I would be wasting, but the only part of it I could eat was the meat. No way to explain that to her without revealing myself, and that could be deadly. I ate the meat and pushed the plate away. Larica was also finished with her meal. I tidied myself and looked up to see the man at the bar watching me again. When he saw me looking at him, he got up and joined me at the table. "I'm sorry to stare," he said, "but something about you puzzles me. I can sense magic around you, but I could swear you're not a spellcaster." He was between me and the door. Would I have to kill him in order to escape? I held Larica more tightly and said, "You're right, I'm no wizard." His gaze dropped to the baby, and something like awe filled his face. "Madam, I think your child has the gift." It wouldn't surprise me, I thought. I liked the way he was looking at Larica, so I shifted to let him see her better. He reached toward me. "May I hold her?" Feeling more hopeful by the moment, I let him take my baby from me. "Magic is wrapped all around her." He rocked her gently, looking enchanted. "What's her name?" "Larica." He nodded at me and smiled. "I'm Macchio." "Jade." I tugged at my hood, alarmed by the way the fire-warmed snakes were moving. I had to get out of here before someone got hurt. "What are you thinking, venturing out among humans? It's too dangerous." I closed my eyes and tried to force Rye's words from my head. "I'm a spellcaster," Macchio said, watching me. That confirmed my suspicions. Maybe I had stumbled on exactly what I needed. "Do you think Larica can become a spellcaster? Is that what you're saying?" "She could if she wanted to. Something about her birth was special, wasn't it?" My throat became tight. I nodded, unable to speak. He stopped trying to peer under my hood and looked down at my baby. "I've never seen a child like her." "That's because they usually die right after birth," I thought with a flood of guilt. But if fortune favored me, I would be able to save Larica. "Naming her will only make this harder. The humans will never accept her. You're only fooling yourself." "Then I will be a fool," I muttered. "What's that?" Macchio looked up from his rapt contemplation. I shook my head. "I need to find a safe home for her." "I'm sure someone could offer you sanctuary at the temple." I shook my head more violently. A hank of my unusual hair slipped from beneath my hood, and I flicked it out of sight again. He was staring at me, and I thought he seemed surprised. Uneasy, I decided the time had come. "I must freshen up," I said, standing up. Will you hold her for me? I'll be right back." "Sure." He was still staring at me, but I doubted he had seen much, because he didn't look afraid. I dared not say goodbye to Larica. I had to slip away before something terrible happened. I had to leave her without a backward glance. The rain was still falling. I thought it only fitting, considering how my heart was breaking. I walked out into the wet, wishing the rain could wash my tears away, but I had to remain hidden. I didn't want to hurt anyone. While I walked, I wept. My arms felt so empty. I couldn't stop thinking about my precious baby and how much of a danger I was to her. I wept because the only thing I could give her was a name. My only comfort was the soft way Macchio had looked at Larica. I hoped he would take good care of her. It was full dark long before home came into view, the cave I shared with my husband. I threw back my hood once I was inside, and my serpentine hair fell around my shoulders. I took off the dark glasses with a sigh of relief. Rye looked up from the fire he was tending. "How did it go?" I burst into fresh tears. His arms were around me within moments. He held me against his chest and rocked me. "Shh, it'll be okay." After a few moments, when my tears eased back to sniffles, he said, "Did she die then?" "No, I protected her like I said I would." I kept my face buried in his shoulder, comforted despite his cold-hearted words when Larica was born. On rare occasions, a normal baby is born to a Medusa. Such children die shortly after birth when the terrible gaze of the mother turns them to stone. But Rye was there for the birth. Rye saw that our child was human. A male of our kind doesn't have the petrifying power the females are cursed with. He had seen it as a bad omen, but his exclamations of disgust warned me not to look at her. Rye hated humans because the humans hunt us. We cannot help what we are. Years later, I would think of her. Even as Rye and I raised our son, the rare male of our kind, I would think of Larica. Hopefully, I was able to give her a good life.
Fantastic. I'm all about this. The tavern was nice and moody. The rain, the atmosphere there. So that's universal imagery of elements. And her seclusion and her covering up, inconspicuous, and what she's hiding. And I had no idea. I like how you worked in how they occasionally have a human unit rather than just a pure Gorgon or Medusa, however you want to call it. That's great how that's in there at the end. And their dispositions and stuff. Very, very cool. Tom, what did you think of that read, man?
Very, very nice. It's always always nice to get a point of view of a monster, so to speak.
Yeah.
They're only human too, right?
Yeah.
Definitely nice to see what tangent they come from and how they think, how they feel. And you get all of that. It's it's a baby. It's her baby, but the idea that she's trying to find a way to introduce it into another, like basically where it belongs, and that she cares to do that. It tells us all we need to know about her, because my Gorgon experience extends to that old Clash of the Titans movie back in the day. I don't mean the remakes, because they're cool, don't get me wrong, but the old one, Ray Harryhausen claymation, like I watched that as a boy or whatever, and I love that flick. And it's like the way he did that the sculpting and the maquette work and the stop motion of her, it's incredible, the lighting and whatever. So I've always been led to believe that they're fearsome, but in this instance we got a lot of soul dripping off her, which is really cool. When did this muse pop into your head as far as the story is concerned? When did you decide you were going to write about a Medusa?
Well, the idea was first when I considered being a dungeon master for Dungeons and Dragons. And I was poking around reading the monster manual and found in the Medusa description that they sometimes have normal babies. So I thought of the encounter where the Medusa is traveling with her husband, trying to find a home for the baby.
Cool.
I thought that would be a good encounter to test the players to see how they respond to this character with the baby and all kinds of nice things like that. And then it eventually occurred to me it would make a good short story.
And it did. What edition game book did you were you reading? Like, what do you run out of, second or third, or are you all the way new? Are you like a modern? Second, yeah. I love second edition, man. I still got some of those books laying around. Yeah. That's a great story. And is that part of some kind of collection that you're working on? Because I know you write about mythical creatures.
I actually have two collections about mythical creatures right now because I have so many stories.
Yeah, that's great. We got to get those. We got to get those in print. I mean, if they're half as good as that one, they'll be delicious. They'll be worth picking that up. Great. Well, that was a fantastic read, Amber. Thank you so much. And we got to hear more of your mythic creatures section, considering you got them laying around, Now, Tom, We
Yeah,
turn our eye on you. Do you have anything to read today?
I
Um,
do.
oh, and what is that? Let's hear.
All right, you ready?
Yes.
Okay, let me share my screen. Dun, dun, dun. Where are we here? Okay, here we go. This is well, I'll say, be self-evident, A Taste of Your Blood, a John Penkram chronicle.
Cool.
All right. I have to lower this. There we go. All right. From the abode of the Jersey Devil, deep in the heart of central New Jersey, I welcome you to Candle in the Night, where there are really things out there in the dark. I am your host, George Candle. Tonight, we bring you a unique visitor. He is a good friend of the program. Many of you know him as the man the ghost hunters call when things get too severe for them to handle. A former policeman, he spent almost 20 years hunting down and investigating the unknown. His name is John Penkram, so stick around and it'll be a keeper. But first, I'd like to welcome you to some new stations for our broadcast. Here is at WADL. The addition of more family members to our syndicate is always a cause for celebration. Tonight we add WRAM of Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and WSST of Topeka, Kansas. Welcome, all of you in Pennsylvania and Kansas. You've come at a great time. That brings our total syndication number to 245. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Now, on to tonight's program. When I first met John Penkram 6 years ago at the annual Mothman Festival in Point Pleasant, New Jersey, Point Pleasant, West Virginia, I brought the show there for a special series of broadcasts to do a thorough look into the phenomena that is Mothman. I had a great time touring the area and partaking of the great food the locals had served up. All that changed on the second day when my guest spoke to a good-sized crowd at the Mothman statue in the center of town. John Penkram had a lot to say about Mothman, including his theory that he or she may in fact be an interdimensional being who travels through time, appearing shortly before man-made structures are about to catastrophically break down. How are you, John? I'm well, thank you, George. It's great to be here again. You were here last year around this time. Yes, almost to the day. At that time, you had a run-in with the Jersey Devil. You were gracious enough to come on and tell us all of the details. Is there anything more you can tell us about that case? George, last time I was here, we had stopped a murder spree by the creature. We never did catch up with it, but it left plenty of evidence behind. What sort of evidence? We had lots of fur, including a patch with skin attached. Wow, that could prove interesting under the microscope. Did you have it analyzed? We did. I'll tell you about that in a moment. Out there in the Pine Barrens, it's easy to lose your way. We had placed GPS trackers at a dozen points along the area we searched through. The creature ran or flew past some of these trackers. When we inspected them later, they were inoperable. How do you mean, inoperable? Their electronic components were fused into one solid mass, as if exposed to great heat, the kind of heat that would have set the forest around it on fire. Was there any fire? No, George, not a sign of anything resembling a fire. The ground in much of the area is soft. This is due to the marshy conditions of large sections of the Pine Barrens. We have over 4 dozen excellent footprint casts taken from an area nearly a mile long. Now those are interesting. You say these prints are excellent. In what way are they excellent? We use a new plaster formula designed to pick up the smallest details. We found dermal ridges, pores, and a half-dozen scars on the left foot. That's incredible, John. Do you think they're authentic? In my opinion, they could not have been faked. There was no time for anyone to have put down the hundreds of footprints in the forest with us chasing the creature. How close to the Jersey Devil were you? I'd have to say we were as close as 100 feet from it at several intervals, and we were never more than 100 or so yards from it. So there's no way that someone could have run between you and the Jersey Devil to fake these footprints. There's no way, George. I've never found better footprints for any creature I've investigated. The funny thing is, the right foot has an impairment that made it imperfect. Like what kind of impairment? That I'm keeping to myself and my small team. If I said anything, the fakers would start adding that detail to their poorly made prints. Well, I see. We've hit a break. When we come back, John will tell us about an encounter that nearly cost him his life. Back in a few minutes. After the commercial break, George Candle and John Pencrum picked up in the middle of a conversation. That sounds like an stimulating experience, John, said George. He paused for a moment. And welcome back to Candle in the Night. I am your host, George Candle. We are talking to a good friend of this program, John Pencrum. You are about to relate to us an encounter you had that was very personal. I hope it's not too personal. No, George, it just hit close to home. For the folks at home, the Pencrum family owns and operates one of the largest and most successful vineyards in New Jersey. I'm partial to your White Zinfandel. I love the name of it. It's Poltergeist White Zinfandel, my mother's favorite. How is your mother, Haley Pencrum? She's even more active now than last time you met her. She's expanding the vineyard to put in a special grapes for a new brandy. Wow, a brandy. I'll have to taste that when it's ready. I'll drop off a case for you when Mother is satisfied with it. I look forward to that. Now, in this incident, did it involve any family members? Yes, in a way. My second wife, Miranda, may have been the target. Is she all right? She's fine. Just a bit shook. That's good to hear. Why don't you tell us what happened? My day could not have gone any worse, John Pencrum began. A poltergeist investigation ended on a wrong note. The family who initially sought my help had changed their mind 1 week into the study. I had some substantial evidence of the phenomena, and I received word that the young woman at the center of the anomalies had gone to live with her father in Ohio. On top of that, my favorite sandwich shop closed its doors. A tire on my car exploded on the way home, and it was raining so hard that the streets turned into dark rivers. Pencrum paused to take a drink of water. After an hour after his tire went flat, a drenched John Pencrum inserted his key into the front door lock and tapped the security code into the touchpad. The door clicked open. Dripping wet, he stepped into the foyer. Before he clicked on the light, he knew something was wrong. Senses from his old life as a policeman kicked in as he moved to a closet. On a shelf above the doorframe, he retrieved a dark dagger from a niche hidden in the front door. His eyes adjusted to the dim light as he stepped into the spacious room. She was dressed in black, making her nearly invisible. In the darkness, a contrast made her white skin nearly glow. A wide-brimmed hat hid her eyes. Her hands were folded in her lap. "You're a difficult man to track down, John." Her voice hinted at old wine and even older manuscripts. "I buried you in Malta 6 years ago," he said. "Yes, you did an excellent job. It's fortunate for me that another tomb was discovered just a few yards from where I lay. They moved the keystone. Pencrum knew back then that it was risky, but she had to be put to rest when they killed her before the sunset. Yes, you needn't worry about the ones who moved the stone. I took them in their sleep, so they didn't suffer. You still killed them. I had little choice. Did they see you? No, I needed to feed. You need to be dead, right now. Here, that would be messy. You'll awaken Miranda. If you've harmed her, no harm has come to her. She will remain in a deep sleep for several more hours. She better be safe otherwise. Otherwise what? You'll kill me? How many times have you killed me over the past 2 decades? I've lost count. He hadn't, but he wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of knowing how many times he had failed. 9 times. One tends to remember dying even that many times. I'll just have to make it 10. It's a good round number. You're running out of ways to kill me, John. One day, no method will work. What then? I think we'll stop there. So that was like the first half.
Yeah, man. That I remember when you read that originally. It was back during the library days.
Right. It wasn't as expanded. I've added to it, but yeah.
No, but that's just a classic Pencrum, because you go from that TV interview of all that stuff with the Jersey Devil, and man, I'll tell you, there's a lot to say about that cryptid. But then it's a question of he comes home and he thinks he's chill, and at 10, way.
Right. Something
I
got
remember
past his security system.
his magical warding and all the stuff, the occult operations and reliquaries and rituals that he did to secure
Mm-hmm.
his psychic territory. It was for naught.
Right.
Um,
And the program he was on before that was a radio program. It's kind of patterned on Coast to Coast.
yeah, I figured as
So,
much. I figured as much. Why not emulate the greats? Many I listen to Coast to Coast sometimes. It's been a while though since I checked it out, but I used to more faithfully years ago. They
right,
had
me
some
too.
great they got some great stuff on there from time to time. YouTube's got the back episodes. It's good for some kicks if you're looking for inspiration for
Oh, sure.
sure. Um yeah, so Pankram, I mean, you probably have talked about him before, but this particular story, how did it work out? Like what was the muse flash and how many drafts did it go through?
It was a really short piece. It was supposed to be a like a writer's prompt. All I had was a little paragraph that it was a different character to it because George came home from the worst day of his life. His sandwich shop closed, the tire blew out, whatever. And when he stepped into his living room, there she was.
Yeah.
And the whole like a little bit of a description, and it ends with "You should be dead." No, I killed you 6 years ago, and that's how it ended. And so I let it sit for a couple of years, and I said, this would be a good Pencrim story, and I just changed it all around.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I do remember it was otherwise. Amber, what did you think of this read and this he didn't read the whole thing. We're going to break it up
First
into
half.
pieces. Yeah, we'll read the rest of it next week maybe. But what did you think of that read?
Very entertaining. I mean, I don't read much about the Jersey Devil in fiction, and then to switch it over to vampires like that.
Ah, but is she a vampire? Aha.
Ah, yeah.
It makes
We'll see.
it makes me wonder, but when I first read it, that's the conclusion that I came to. She's got a very vampire vibe about her.
Sort of
Um,
like coming home and finding Elvira in your living room.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Well, yeah. I mean that would be interesting. As far as the Jersey Devil's concerned, man, I saw one of those footprints in snow one time. They have sites where they show a bunch of them. They seem to occur in snowy weather. And I was at a friend's house. This is quite a few years ago already. And in the backyard, there was only snow in the backyard, like in a big patch. I would say like a patch the size of a baseball mound. And in this patch of snow, there was a single hoof print, just one, not
Hmm.
not a bunch of them. There was one. And how could that be? Like if it bounded, like if this is a deer, which is we're going to go into the materialist paradigm. If this is a deer, then a deer bounded into the yard and then bounded into the snow and then leapt away. And that's how that happened because there were no tracks. So without a continuity of tracks, how did the deer get there? So clearly it must have jumped. Uh, but how could one print be left out of that exchange? Is this a one-legged deer? And did
Hmm.
it somehow clear on that one leg and get over that patch? I used to have the pick, I don't know if I still do. If I have it, I'll make it my background at some point because it's very, very interesting. And I did see it with my own eyes. Like he took the pick. Um, my phone was inside or whatever, and he took the pic and then he sent it to me.
Hmm.
And it's like I was imagining in my head that this was this winged thing with hooves, and that it like it lowered down and touched down with one of its hooves and then like flew away. uh that's my third eye seeing it the way that if it was the Jersey Devil, because in South Jersey you could run into that. People have
Oh,
seen
sure.
it. Yeah, I mean, no one knows what it is, but it could, because it's a cryptid. But there's so many different explanations to it. um it's or the origin story is crazy too.
Hmm.
And Amber's right, you don't see it a lot in fiction. Um, so just mentioning it and having Penkram swirl his wine glass while talking about the Jersey Devils, it's pretty hip. Tells us what kind of jazz master John Penkram is.
Well, yeah, I did a complete rewrite of Penkram's backstory from this lord in his Scottish castle on the shores of Loch Ness.
Yeah.
I changed his whole thing around. I put him in the northern edge of the Pine Barrens in New Jersey, and he's got a vineyard, and he's got the walled estate, and he has six families of Lenni Lenape Indians living on his estate that his family rescued and offered them a place to stay rather than when they were being all killed off. And 400 years ago or whatever, in 1600s, and they gratefully work for him. They work in the vineyard, and so there's an awful lot of stuff, that just came into my head with this. The lake. You read the piece was a lake. There's a lake that has a kelpie
Mm,
uh, that inhabits the lake. The edge of the lake, and a water
Kelpie
horse. Sorry,
fictions.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
and
Kelpie fiction's great, man.
so it's
I
you know
actually have an idea for a Kelpie story to add to my mythological creatures collection.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you how that idea is simmering. Have you had any other muse flashes about that? Because I remember us chatting about it at one point.
I've actually been working on one about a unicorn, and one about a yeti.
mm,
Yeah, you're the one Bigfoot Sasquatch one you read was really great.
Well,
Again,
the yeti
monsters.
one's going to be a little more violent.
Nice, nice. Yeti, yeah, I think that's how it is with Yetis too. Aren't they more hostile than your average Bigfoot? Like have we
in
ever?
this yeah in the fiction, yep, and then in the folklore. Sorry,
Yeah,
folklore.
well,
Well,
I'm asking. I'm definitely asking you, Tom, because I know you're reading up on Bigfoot and all that is extensive. But how
Oh,
about you, Amber? Why did you draw that conclusion that you were going to play with violence this time?
well, I just had the idea for poking around with cryptid encounters of to what kind of person would encounter a yeti, and I decided to create this arrogant big game hunter who's stomping around the mountains like he owns the place, who decides he's going to try to shoot the yeti and gets killed by it.
hmm.
Sweet. I want to hear that one. Um, yeah, so that sounds great. And Tom, what do you think about this Yeti equation? Where are you at? Like they're more violent than skunk apes, or what?
Yes. There's more violent encounters with them over the years, and also the Sherpas and whatever say don't bug them. Do
No,
not.
no,
You know,
never. Yeah.
There's a few
I
spots in California, in the U.S. that like Ape Canyon in California and southern Alaska, where there's areas where I said, we just don't go in there during certain times of the year because you'll never come out. Um,
Yeah, for
but
real.
Yeti, the there's a feeling that I agree with that there could be upwards of 9 to 10 different species of something that's lumped together as Bigfoot slash Yeti. Um, so the I think Yeti is very distinctly different than your North American Sasquatch.
Yeah, that's the thing, man. When you have encounters of similar things that are uniform all over the world, it makes you wonder. Like, if
Mhm.
one silly goose saw this, gazing up from his moonshine, then you could go, well, maybe that's just what that is. But when it's all over the world and people see the same things and they all fit a similar cast. Some of them are seen with dogmen, some of them are seen with alien grays and coincide, their sightings coincide with UFO activity. And some of them are just really plain Jane, where they're walking around with sticks trying to brain you because they don't
Mm.
like where you are. There's all different flavors. I heard one on Beyond Creepy where the Bigfoot was conversational and just talking with people. I was like,
Who
oh yeah,
knows?
by the way, I live in this place and I'm really not supposed to be here right now. And it's all like telepathic. It's like, that's what everyone needs, is telepathic contact from a Bigfoot. That'll definitely make you weak. Um,
But
so
uh,
anyway, go ahead, Tom. Go ahead.
I had a flash for a second. I listened to a radio podcast. A woman named Madame Raven, and she had a whole thing about she she found all these old reports of Bigfoot in Europe and England and whatever, and she kind of thinks she equates the sightings with that with the sightings of the Green Man and the Wild Hunt and all these really
Mm,
old wild man encounters, and she said they've been seen for so many thousands of years that it's just not a mid 20th century phenomenon. Since then, it's they've always been with us. Europe, there's the hundreds of legends and stories of the woodmen, the wild
yeah,
men of the woods, and who are all covered with
absolutely.
hair, and so you know,
Up in those northern reaches, when you have the old talk of beings like trolls, these hairy things that used to harass people, and you'd have to get a bear shirt, a berserker in there to go deal with it, and chase these things off. It's like, it makes me wonder if there was a Bigfoot that just had really bad hygiene, or maybe some kind of terrible skin disease like a mange. If these ancient Norsemen and Celts were seeing Bigfoots and calling them trolls,
could be.
yeah, I mean, that's what I love to do. I love taking that stuff because there's always something common in the infrastructure of cryptids that can overlap with mythic stuff. Like when Hades abducted Persephone, and he brought upon Demeter her great woe, where she had to go sue for Zeus so that this could be set right. Um, how is that any different to an alien abduction?
Mm.
You know, where a person is taken against their will and subject to whatever, and it's just, I love bridging that gap between prehistory and modern phenomena when it comes to this stuff. It's like, it's perfect for getting ideas for a story
Oh,
to
sure.
compare it. Um, I mean, I YouTube a lot.
A good one, like,
Um,
or Jacques Vallée, right?
uh, yeah,
He has a series of books. One of them is Passport to Magonia. Basically, his central thesis is all the ancient stories about the trickster and about the um, all these unusual encounters with creatures that would, like Rip Van Winkle was a perfect example. That would take you away, and 20 years would go by, and you'd come back, and your children are full grown. And
yeah,
there's tons of missing time stories in all these, yeah, in Europe and wherever, in China, and he says it's all the same phenomena that's still going on today. He basically calls it the trickster phenomenon. That we are being toyed with by whatever this
yeah.
phenomenon is.
He's wise to point that out, and the way to check that out is check out Dave Politis's Missing 411 series,
Mm.
how he points out, especially concerning national parks, and there's other books too, like UFOs and Nukes, where they take modern police work and they start pinning down where all these sightings occur, and you get to see a map as if this were being like as if it's an investigation, like they have a dossier open, but
Mm-hmm.
it's about this stuff that most people don't even take seriously. But cryptids and UFOs are coming out of the woodwork. I mean, they had those congressional hearings and all that for UAPs or whatever. So it's starting to get taken a little more seriously, which I
Yeah.
think is probably for the best. This is a very old planet in an ancient universe. You know, the idea that there's a no. I'm not saying they're everywhere. We'd see them if they were super prolific. We'd see them every day. But the idea that it's impossible, certainly a writer of fiction shouldn't come to those reductive conclusions about anything. You know, it's better to get inspiration listening, even if you think it's rubbish, just to check it out.
Right.
Yeah, so that's great as a source for inspiration. Now, Amber, before we run out of time, I wanted to ask you, do you have anything about to say about your creative planner, how you have this daily and weekly schedule for your writing? I know you just applied it to your creative expression, but have you noticed any benefit, you know?
We might have lost her.
Yeah, I think we have
She
some
hasn't
technical
blinked in a few minutes.
difficulties. Oh my. Well,
So, well, we can continue a little bit.
yeah, I wanted to ask you then, Tom, if we have technical difficulties. Uh, but you were working
No,
on the Emily Breck
is that better?
journals.
Right.
Oh, are you back, Amber?
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
good.
wonderful. I'm sorry, there was a little bit of a hitch up there. I
My
asked
internet
you.
connection went unstable for a minute.
Yeah, it's okay. It happens. Happens to me too. I wanted to ask you about your creative planner. Have you noticed any benefits? I know it's you just applied it, but I figured we could keep a little episode, like reoccurring episode of asking you how it's benefited you, because we're encouraging those in the JWC community and those listening to try it out the same way. So,
Well, I didn't get anything on the planner done yesterday because the heat was just too bad. And my medication makes it so I get sleepy in the heat real easy. So I ended up sleeping for 2 hours.
you probably needed it, you know?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
probably.
But needless to say, we're going to keep checking up on that because I used to do the same thing, and I got to get back to it because it definitely, especially when you got a couple projects going at once, it can really get your word yield boosted. You can throw down a lot more words.
Mm.
When I was writing Nidhogg, I was sometimes writing 2,000 words a day, which if you listen to these people, they say that's pretty good. So yeah,
Yeah.
we'll revisit that. Oh, I'm sorry, you were saying?
Oh, I was gonna say, yeah, 2,000 words a day is pretty good. It was my goal was 2,000 words a day before the pandemic hit, and my creativity got kind of skewed.
Mm-hmm. Now it was a rough time for all of us for sure. So yeah, thank you. Tom, uh, about these Emily journals,
Right.
we got a little more time to talk about it. How's that been going?
It's a lot of fun. The story is up in my head, so I could reference it I'm doing it like a dictionary, and I'll just write. Sometimes it's only a couple of sentences. Right now, I'm doing the diary entries when she's dealing with Maximilian Cortez, the lonely ghost of St.
That's
Augustine.
right. That's right. Was that in New Orleans
Uh,
that takes place?
no, St. Louis. St. Augustine, sorry.
Yeah.
The oldest city in North America.
Oh, well, then that would explain it.
Lots.
I'm not going to spoil that chapter by saying anything about it, but I remember enjoying it. It was really great. Very moody, atmospheric. So you're doing little snippets of that, getting your journal down. Maybe we'll have some of that to hear in
That's
an up and coming live stream, right?
sure. It's a little spoily, but hey.
Well, then maybe we shouldn't. Maybe we
Hmm.
shouldn't. Maybe we should wait until it's in print then. That would be the best case scenario so that people get enticed. Best not to spoil something. We're already real generous with the words we throw down. Nobody can knock our street cred. Okay, so this has been a great live stream episode, as usual. You guys are fantastic with these reads. Time flies. When you got
Oh,
real creatives throwing words down, time flies. It's like, forget it. So Amber, why don't you tell us about the book you're plugging, please? We're gonna do our plugs now and then sign off.
Well, the only thing I have for sale right now is Death's Nightmare. That one's the vigilante serial killer forming a friendship with a detective. Or, my bad, he's not a detective, he's a state cop. He's a lieutenant. But he gets taken off the case after Jonathan decides that he's going to show interest in the cop who's searching for him by breaking into the man's apartment for a friendly chat.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, I read some chapters of this, and this is real tasty. So that's Amber Danson again, everyone. And you're the book is, what is it, Death's Nightmare?
Yeah.
Okay, go check that out. That's on Amazon, right?
Right, and right now Amazon's running a sale on it.
All right, folks, go get it, gobble it up. You heard her. She got great stuff. No reason not to. You're looking for something new? I can give you a testament. It's definitely great as far as that dark thriller stuff goes. Check it out. So, Tom, how about you? What do you got for sale? What are you plugging?
I'm plugging Dwellers in the Shadows. It's a short story collection, little creepy things that I've collected over the years. That first collection, second collection will be coming out. Oh boy, oh boy! I'm hoping July 4th. Try to get that out.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Dwellers in the Shadows. It has a spider on the cover because there's another book that has Dweller in the Shadows. It's not that one. It's look for the spider.
So is that Thomas Tiernan or?
Yes. Yep.
All right, that's great. I don't know what happened. I think maybe it went out.
Did it end?
I don't know if it ended or not.
That's okay.
Don't do that, you silly computer.
Well, anyway, I think it might have stopped. I can't tell. Maybe I got a bad connection.
Maybe.
Well, anyway, I'll plug Babbletron later. I think we're good. So.
Whoops.
All right, we're going to break it off now then, I guess, because I think the live stream terminated. I think we went over an hour. Yeah, an unknown error occurred.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah, all right. Well, it terminated, so
I wonder where.
Anyway, I'll talk to you guys soon, okay? It was a great show. Thanks a lot for everything.
Hi, Amber. Good to see you. Whoops.
All Likewise. Right. You guys take care.